Good morning, everyone. Thank you for another IMG VMR session. Today, we have a very special guest. She's Dr. Maria Mora Pinzon. She's a physician scientist, board certified in preventive medicine and public health. She graduated from the Universidad Central de Venezuela, la Escuela José María Vargas in Caracas, Venezuela, and completed her preventive medicine residency at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She is currently an assistant professor on the tenure track at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Department of Medicine, Division of Geriatrics and Gerontology. She's going to help us today to learn how to tailor our CV for, it doesn't matter if you're an IMG applying for the match this year or next year, or even if you're looking for applying to any positions, today we're gonna learn a lot from her. Thank you, Dr. Maria. Could you tell us a little bit more about you and also what you like doing outside of medicine?
No, thank you for having me. I think you described what I'm doing right now, and I think one of the questions that I get asked is what's preventive medicine? So preventive medicine, a board certified specialty here in the US that dedicates a lot of its time to take care of the populations. And that's a lot of my work, how to make the care that we provide better, improving the quality, improving the access to care, and doing a lot of research on how all of the things that affect health outside of the health system. What do I like to do in my free time? Of course, travel, that's always high on the list. I like to visit new countries, new places, but also I'm a foodie. I try many restaurants and different type of foods just to see what's out there in the world. And I'm very happy to be here. And for whoever is listening, that this process is a long one, very, very long one, been there, done that. So I can tell you, I know there's many questions, never be afraid of ask because it's long and we are here to support each other, okay?
Thank you so much as IMGs and even as other undergrad, graduate people that wants to apply to any other positions, research, clinical, you name it. It's very important to know how to present ourselves. So let's begin with the questions. And by the way, feel free to add any other questions in the chat. Will we have a little Q&A session at the end of the question that we have prepared? So yeah, thank you for joining. The first question will be, what is the difference between a CV or a resume?
Great question. And I think this is one of the first things that people usually ask me, that I'm applying to this job and they're asking me to put a resume, I don't have that, or they're asking me for a CV and I don't have that. There's a main difference between these two. A CV really details all of the stuff that you have done in your career, really is a chronological order of the things that you have done, publications, career, positions, many things that you have done. A resume is a skills-based. This means that really highlights is what are your main skills or the main things that you do or the most relevant for the job. A CV might include things like your publications or your volunteer experiences. That might not be, there's not a place for that in your resume. In that is mostly like, what are the things that you do? What are the things that you have learned? For example, you're great at multitasking, you have all of this computer science background, or you have developed campaigns, and maybe you give 2 or 3 examples of the positions that are most relevant. Most of the time when you're applying to jobs, either of those might work. Oh, they're asking for a resume, but I uploaded a CV. 90% of the time doesn't matter. As long as the main information that you need to convey is there. And I think we'll go to talk about that in a second. So don't stress out. Do I have one or the other? Don't stress out.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, that was the thing that I personally didn't know. So I'm very thankful that all the positions I had, even with CVs or resumes, they accepted me. So the next question, what is the best format we should use for our CV?
And when I say we were going to talk about this, it's right here. There's not a right or wrong format. The things that you need to make sure your CV has is well organized, either chronologically from most recent to the oldest or from the oldest to the most recent. In general, you want to I recommend if you're applying for a new job, start with the most recent thing and to the oldest. Why? Because you are highlighting the attention of this is what I'm doing right now. But also the organization of the CV will depend on what you're applying for. If you're applying for a clinical position, I expect to see first your clinical experience. Don't put your clinical experience at the bottom because, oh, I haven't done anything clinical in 5 years. Why? Because you're applying for a clinical position. I want to see very quickly, can you do this job? What's been your experience on this? Similarly, if you're applying for a research job, put your research experience first. And there's multiple formats. As long as it's organized, you're fine. And then Google CV format or use AI, give me my CV, here's my information, put it in a format. There's templates in Word, there's templates in Google. So there's not a right or wrong format, as long as things are organized. For me, one of the things that makes it extremely hard to read a CV is when I have multiple fonts. There's a pink one here, there's a blue one here, there's a green line over there. Try to keep it black and white. But sometimes if somebody's printing, they just keep it black and white. So keep it black and white. If you need to use a color, use gray, like light gray or middle gray. Don't add any extra colors. In medicine, if we were talking about creative jobs, another thing, that's a different story. But for medicine, less is more. Make sure that the fonts are okay, that everything is the same font and the same spacing. Also, many times, people might try to do gaming the system and add like whiteboards or something like that to expand the space or something like that. Keep it simple, just regular spacing across your CV. There's one thing that I want to highlight is that a lot of times right now that when you upload a CV, it goes to a program that reads it and extracts all of the information. So that's why it's extremely important that things are high labeled, in the sense these are research positions or these are appointments, these are awards, because the system will not, if that's 3 lines before, and the spacing is irregular, many times the computers get confused and don't know what they're reading.
Completely understand. So if I'm applying, what should I present first on my CV if I'm applying for a clinical job? Let's say that I'm applying for residency or for a medical assistant position as an IMG. Should I add first, like, for example, if I have been a medical scribe or if I have worked in other places of medical assistance? How does that work?
Just like you said, the first thing, put those relevant experiences in the front. And you might be questioning, what's a relevant experience? Look at the position description. So this does not apply for residency because the ERAS CV has its own format. You're just going to fill out all of the information and that one is going to organize it. But let's say that you're looking for an observership position or you're looking for a medical assistant position. What's the relevant experience? Look at the position description that you're applying. They might ask, we want somebody with 2 to 3 years of experience in the healthcare setting. What do you have of experience? If you say, oh, I only have a couple of shadowing opportunities, put it there. I mean, you need to highlight that. You need to highlight that you know the system or that you have been in the system, and that's what you want to put first. Of course, the first things I usually put in the CV as education, what's your degree from? If you do that thesis, that goes there. If you have any other training, undergraduate training back at home or something like that, that goes there. And then you go experiences and label like that, experiences. So that way you can put observerships, volunteers, or any other non-paid experience that is relevant for the job. Will somebody ask, well, what did you pay for is this was volunteer or paid? That's something that you can explain during an interview. But this doesn't, the point of the CV is to get to people to know what have you done. Again, this is only for applying to jobs. It does not apply to residency on ERAS because they have those, they will tell you the categories.
That's very true. And before we go on onto like describing exactly what does it mean, like how can I describe my activities, I do have a big question, especially for IMGs or even for MS that take research years. What do we consider a gap year? And for example, I am IMG that for external causes, let's say migratory causes, whatever, I couldn't work. So I don't have a working experience, let's say 1 year almost. But in the meantime, I had volunteer or not paid positions. Would that be still considered a gap year that I didn't work, but I still did something? Or how can I compensate that?
Gap year, when the term usually came to referring to breaks in training. So between medical, undergrad, medical school, and training, that's what specifically we refer to gap years. It's not about what you did on those gap years. It's like if you didn't go continuously, if you didn't go undergrad, med school, residency, and there's spaces in those times that were you were not on training, that's a gap. It doesn't matter if we were doing volunteer or something else. Technically, that's a gap year. How to refer gap years is one of the things that usually IMGs, we worry a lot about those. Because we hear, oh, you have gap year, so you need to explain what you'll be doing or something like that. Or you have 5 gap years or things like that, or 5 years since you graduated, you don't have a chance. Let me tell you, depends on the specialty, depends on the hospital, depends on the people that you're working, depends what you've been doing. If you've been doing a PhD, technically that's not a gap year, you've been doing training. If you say, I was doing all of this immigration paperwork and I couldn't work and I couldn't do anything official, but I was doing caregiving, yeah, that's a gap year. But then it's an experience that you need to reflect in your CV some way or form. Might not be on their CV like paid caregiver or unpaid caregiver. I've seen it. I do not recommend it. But that's one of the things that you will explain in your interview, in your personal statement, in many other places. So for the CV and resume, stick to the facts, stick to the things that you can say. You could get a letter of recommendation and you could confirm, hey, I was doing this. I'm not saying, well, if you are caring for kids or maybe for family, don't put in your CV. Well, that's one of the things, again, I think should be in the CV, but it's not well accepted. So use your interviews and your personal statements to reflect those things.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, that's something that many IMGs that have to go to like migratory process or that need to do some other type of work aside from medical to like have some money to save and come here. Normally they find, or we find ourselves in the situation of how can I explain that on my CV? Now, how should I organize my experiences? Meaning like, should I first put my appointments, leadership positions, volunteer positions, because there are so many formats out there. So what is the most important for us if we're applying, let's say, for a clinical experience or even research?
For the job market, I think do not really. It depends of your experience. Here's what I say. If you have a lot of one thing, let's say you have a lot of research experience, you have maybe one volunteer experience, but you have like maybe one observership. Don't classify things because it looks kind of weird. Like if you have 5 things in one category and one. Just say experiences and organize them in chronological order. If you have, let's say, 3 or 4 leadership positions, 3 or 4 research positions, and you still have like 3 or 4 different observerships, yeah, it's fine to categorize them and put first whichever job you're applying. But again, this is something that it will depend on what you're applying to. But don't get too stressed out about, is this a research versus this is a volunteer because I was not getting paid. Most people, when they're looking at your CV, they might not care whether you're getting paid or not. They just want to see what type of experience were you having. That's why I say volunteer is okay. But let's say if you were volunteer for an organization that you were in charge of a large campaign, hey, that's people gets paid for that job. So that's why using maybe the label of experiences in general to reflect the things that you did might be good enough.
Okay, I completely understand. So whenever we put our activities, our experiences, we should describe it. Now, going into like how to describe it, for example, if I was, let's say, a research assistant in a lab, should I put, I coordinated, I don't know, like an experiment with this, this, and this? How should I make it more efficient, or like explain better my activities and like in my experience?
Great question. Great question. So the first thing, never start a statement with I. Recibe, and this to say, I did this, I did that, because we get tired of reading the I. So make them in third person. Perform, executed, led, and then make sure that the tense, the verb is on the tense, that if it was already an activity that ended, that all of those verbs are in past tense. If it's something that's ongoing, that all of those verbs are in present. If it's something that you will do, that you are sending the CV ahead of time, you can say, I will be doing or will perform the following activities. Then, how to describe it? 3 things. And I want everybody to write this out. First one, what did you do? Again, first one, what did you do? Did you supervise people? Did you do experiments? Did you do data collection? Did you do HMPs? Did you do physical examinations? What did you do? Second thing, how did you do it? And in this particular part, I want you to quantify as much as possible. How did you do data collection? For example, I review 500 charts or 500 medical records to extract the following data: demographics, patient outcomes, I don't know, lab results, blah, blah, blah. HMPs, how do you do an HMP? I perform physical examinations under the supervision of a provider, including lungs or auscultations, or I perform lumbar punctions under sterile conditions. Third thing, and this is very important, what did you achieve? What was the final outcome? Out of these particular research projects, we had 2 papers accepted or 1 of poster accepted. Sometimes it's something that you haven't published, but then here is what did you achieve? Well, we collected information on 355 patients that were being that are right now being prepared for data analysis. For volunteer activities, if you say, I was a volunteer for an organization and we organized webinars, I led and organized the logistics of 35 webinars over 2 years, reaching out over 300 people, or impressions in social media, where according to our impressions in social media, we reach out over 300,000 people with our message. Quantify what you achieve. If you're talking about a volunteer experience and you say, oh, we collected food for people, how many families did you serve? We serve about 40 families every week. Number, and I love what somebody mentioned in the chat, numbers have power. I really cannot emphasize this enough. Even if you say, oh, I just did an observership, and don't tell me only observe medical cases. That doesn't tell me anything. What did you learn? What did you achieve? If you say, the only thing that I achieved was as I learned about medical system, put that there. After this experience, I was able to understand how to use the electronic health record to document information, or I learned about the functioning of multidisciplinary teams. That's something that you achieve. How to quantify that? Oh, during this experience, I saw 3 to 4 patients per day. Or I follow this attending, we saw 3 or 4 patients with the following conditions, blah, 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 blah. I participated in grant rounds. I collected over 50 hours of CME in this experience. Quantify and explain what you did. Many times, and this is the main error that I see in all of us, because and I also did it once. What you think is obvious is not. Don't say observe medical cases. What does that mean? Did you present? Were you part of grant rounds? Did you see the procedures? Were you able to write notes? Were you able to use the electronic medical record? Sometimes you get to actually do some of the physical examinations. Don't assume that somebody knows what you're referring to. If you're doing research, don't just say prepare a manuscript. What does that mean? Did you collect the data? Did you do the data analysis? Did you write the first draft? Did you provide feedback? Did you do the formatting? What did you do? Tell me exactly how you contributed to that job. If it's a research opportunity that you are having. Oh, I'm a research assistant. Tell me more. What does that mean? Some people as a research assistant, they do consent. And that highlights that you're not just doing research, you're also making connections with patients. If as part of your research opportunity, you're doing shadowing procedures or collecting data in the OR or collecting data from patients and doing consents, right there. Perform informed consent activities, collected blood samples, communicated with patients about the results of the research. That's very important. Just because it's research doesn't mean that you are not doing something clinically relevant. So if you have anything like that, make sure that that's clear.
Well, thank you so much. We have a question. Tansu, would you like to ask it, Ella?
Sure. So I saw in some resumes that people write about things they hope to achieve after working in a certain position or a place and gaining certain skills. Like, I hope to integrate this in my patient care in the future as a clinician, that type of a thing. Do you think that's appropriate to mention in a resume?
No, not on the resume, but certainly in a resume, if you're using a resume, you have a little objective description above, a little description of who you are. So that is a good place to put that. In the sense that say you're applying to research job and you say, you describe, hey, I'll give you an example of how mine will look like. Physician trained in preventive medicine with skills on data management, data collection, design of research studies for population health. I hope it is my intention to use my skills to improve access to healthcare services for Latino older adults, and this activity and this job will provide additional skills on X, Y, or Z. The place where I really want to see people to put this is in cover letters and personal statements. When you are applying for a job, you will get 90% of the time they will ask you for a cover letter. That cover letter will have to include three things. Again, three things. First one, who you are very briefly, your experiences that match the job that you're applying, and why you want this job. That's what you hope to achieve. So in a cover letter, you will say, and if you're applying to a research job and you're sending me in my lab and you're sending me your cover letter, I don't want to see, and I want to use this to apply for residency in 6 months. Why? Because I'm looking for somebody to stick doing the research for longer than that. So that's a situation where I will not recommend putting it if you are just thinking about this job about short term. Unless this is a job that is for 6 months or 1 year only, then it's totally acceptable because it has an end date. If it says this position is just for 1 year and it's been advertised for 1 year, and you can totally say, as you can see from my CV, I have a lot of experience in patient collaborations and patient management. And I hope that in this particular position, I will have the opportunity to enhance my skills and get a better sense of how to serve this particular community. Perfectly reasonable. I love it. In the personal statement, make sure that your personal statements always reflect where you are going, why you want to get the training, what you hope to do with the skills. And this is the part that I refer with should be aspiration. Don't just tell me I want to do residency. Tell me what you want to do with this training. I want to do residency because I want in the future to be able to serve the Latino community in my home country or in my town, or provide care for people with cancer. And though I might not cure cancer, I will do this, this, and that. Or I will seek to work with this particular group of people, or train the future of the profession, blah, 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 blah. basically the aspirational thing is great for personal statements. Do not put it in the resume unless it's in the objective description, and even then 50-50, I think most of the time it will get lost.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Tensu, for the question too. Like, I think that's something very important to be very aware to where are you going to apply, how much time, if what you're looking forward to do also alignates with your hiring, with your hires. So that's something that if an IMG wants to apply here for 1 year of research or 6 months of research, that is something that we can like mold in our cover letter too. So now talking about research, when we have publications, let's say abstracts or papers, how should I write it down? Even if I'm not the first author, for example, let's say that I'm the fourth, but I also collaborated in it and it's in a paper. So how should I add it to my CV?
All of the publications, let's start with this. All of the publications, no matter your location, those count. And no matter where you did it. So if you say, oh, this was published in a Latin American journal or a Middle Eastern journal, this is not a English, it is not a journal in English. It still counts, and you should always keep track of the things that you have done, no matter where your position is. Then always do the formal citation. And what's the formal citation? It depends on what the format is being used, but in general, it's the author's last name, first name, initial, the title of the project, and where it was published or where it was presented. So if it's a poster presentation at American College of Preventive Medicine, July 2023, and the city that happened. I always keep the citation. Again, doesn't matter where you place it in the authorship list. What I recommend is make sure that you bold or highlight or underwrite your name so people can easily see where you are. Now, a lot of people think that because you're not first author does not count. Nope, that's not true. It counts. It still shows that you were part of a project, that you contributed to something. Maybe you were not the lead, but it still shows that you contributed. That being said, you need to make an effort to get at least something as a first author. Why? Still, first author shows a lot of dedication. Being a first author is not about, oh, you got the first author. It's about, to get a first author, you had to lead the project, manage a lot of people, manage deadlines, manage timelines, making sure that you were leading and incorporating feedback. So when for junior trainees, for people that's applying to residency, being a first author to me means they took responsibility and got the job done. And that's why I say I highlight that you try to get always a first author. You don't need to have 25 first authors. Maybe 1 or 2. It might be a poster. Doesn't have to be a paper that goes to Nature. It might be a case report. Again, the main thing for younger trainees that I see when I'm looking at first author is responsibility. Were they able to take the initiative and ask for a first author or work enough for a first author? That's the main thing.
That's very interesting because I think we'll have this concept of I have to have like 10 publications, like as even if I'm not a first author, but maybe this is more quality versus quantity then. Another question that we have, for example, when writing a CV, what are the most common mistakes that you have seen with presenting one?
I would say the disorganization, certainly when multiple fonts, multiple letters, and things that are not organized correctly. So I've seen CVs where the positions, the appointments are first in old, from old to newest. But then when you go to the next part about awards, they are newest to oldest. If you're going to stick to a chronological order, please go always the same way in each of your sections. Sometimes when looking at a CV, there's always questions like, oh, they graduated in 2013, but I don't see anything until 2017. What happened in these 4 years? For some people, that's a red flag. They might try to look for why is this happening. Other people will ask you for an interview and say, "Oh, I noticed that you had a large gap in between two things, but what's happening there?" So a couple of the ways that this cannot be addressed. So if you were doing volunteers, making sure that those type of activities were there or were reflected somewhere in your CV. Particularly if it's a very large gap, and I'm talking more than a year. A year, it's for me particularly, I don't see it as a big deal because I know, hey, between visas and sometimes moving, and I know who I'm interviewing. I can see, well, I bet that there were many things happening in their life and I don't mind. The other error that I see a lot is the lack of descriptions. Even though it might be obvious to you what a research assistant does, at least 2 or 3 bullet points under each of the descriptions highlighting your skills and the things that you achieve. Again, we go back to what did they do in this research position? Oh, were they getting consent or they were doing just lab web experiments? So having those little descriptions, 2, 3 bullet points really helped me to figure out is this a person that I will even want to consider for this job? And the third thing, that the biggest error is not matching your CV to what the job position is looking for. I'll give a very specific example. I was looking for a research specialist that had experience with IRBs, documentation, and tracking. And I had somebody with a PhD that applied for the job. But she never mentioned in her CV nor cover letter this particular bullet point, and that was in my require. In the list of the job, we say we require somebody with this experience. I interview her and I said, and I asked her, "Hey, did you have experience with IRB?" And she said, "Yeah, I did. I mean, I organized 3 IRBs in 3 different countries and all of the other things." So for some positions, it's going to be HR or somebody that doesn't know the job, just checking the boxes. Do they have this? And if they don't have it very clearly reflected in their CV, they will disregard that application automatically. So you need to make sure that whatever is being asked in the position, you match that in the CV. So if you can use the same language, the better. If the position says we need somebody with experience doing blood pressure measurements, diabetes measurements, and you have that experience, please make sure that that's reflected in one of the descriptions in your CV or in your cover letter. As a medical assistant for so-and-so doctor, I was in charge of doing all of these measurements. Why? That will save some time for whoever is looking at your application first, and that might be, again, somebody that doesn't know the job and they're just relying on what is written to see if you will go to the next position, to the next stage of the interview.
Oh, thank you so much for that insight. Tansu has another question.
Yes, thank you so much for your very thorough explanations, Dr. Pinzon. My question is about where to put the research grants and awards, because sometimes I see that people mention it under their experiences section as a part of like researcher position, that they got a certain award and that enabled them to be in that research position. But if there's a publication that came out of it, I saw that people write the grant award number after their publication. So where would be the most appropriate place to mention these awards for research?
Well, there's the different types of awards, and I will think, let's say, if you're referring an award as a grant, like, hey, this is a fellowship where this is a position that came with that award, like I was selected as a fellow of something, 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 and that as an award, that will go in your experiences as a research experience, but the description should include, this was a very competitive research award, so where I was selected because of my experience X, Y, or Z. And during this 1 year fellowship award experience, I did the following activities. And you describe the activities that you did on them. If you got a publication, then you also have a publication that you need to put in the other section. And then those I think the two main places. If this is an award, like let's say that you got a $500 travel award to present at a conference, you should have a section in your CV that says travel award. Or if you don't have it, in the description of that job, that poster that you were presented, that should have a research assistant or research experience associated with it. And you can say, the work of this project was obtained a research award, a travel research award for $500. So basically, a research position on their experience and the publication, and you could also have an award. So something could have 3 mentions in your CV, and that's fine. There's no double dipping, there's no repeating.
All right. And you would also recommend putting the amount of the award as well. The
Oh,
money
yeah.
amount.
I highly recommend putting the amounts. If you're talking about if you're talking about research grants as awards, there's a specific format to put that in your CVs that usually includes who is the title, who is the agency that's providing the award, who is the PI or the person that received the award. Because even it might be that it was your PI who got the award, but with that award they hire you. And then a description of what what was the funded of the project.
Thank you so much.
You're
Wow,
welcome.
that's very, like I said, that's amazing. I didn't know how to like write words and stuff in the CV. And going into the same line, well, similar line, certifications. How do we write down our certifications? Because, for example, for us, IMG is the ECFMG certification or any other that we may have. Like I've seen many people aiding the ACLS or any other certification they have. How should we like add it on their CV? Like at the end, in the middle? Does it matter like where we put it?
It depends on what you're applying. So in my CV, when this is not my academic CV, but was the CV that I always use for almost everything else. I have a category called licenses and certifications, where I have, these are my medical license, or I got a medical license here and it's right now inactive, or this one is active. I put medical licenses at home. So I say I was licensed for practice medicine in Spain. I have a license to practice medicine in Venezuela. I put that there. And then I also put ECFNG certification, date this, and this is the number if you want to look for it. If you're going to post your CV in any official site or any like career site, take out any numbers like the number of your licenses or the number of your ECFNG certification. But if it's like you're submitting for an official job, it's okay to have the number there. ATLS, BLS, those were also there because I'm getting licenses and certification, and I put expired this day. Certifications, like you say, like for example, city training. You can put it some in the CV like that, the city training or completing the following courses, expiration date, and you put the 2 or 3 there. Oh, I did a certification webinar and that's not really certified by anybody. Don't put it. And this is something that sometimes, I'm from Venezuela. So at home, we used to put every course and congress that we attended in our list of activities. That's not done in the CVs here. So I don't want to see, oh, I attended this conference. Unless you were presenting at the conference, there's no room for that in your CV. If you did like a 3-day workshop and something, and okay, I did a 3-day workshop on how to do splints for orthopedic surgery, maybe. I will say put a different category in your CV and say additional training or career development or other training. And then you highlight those courses that maybe you did. That's non-standard. So you might not see that in any other, in most CVs, but I recommend it if you have something that you really want to highlight that you got extra training. Some people do like a lot of cosmetic training because they work on cruise ships and other things like that. That you could put there. You could put other training. Hey, I was trained to do Botox, or Botox training 72 hours done by so and so. That's again, non-standard. You will not see that with, you're talking about typical medical CVs in the US, but it's something that if you think it will be important for the year you're applying, I highly recommend putting like that. But don't put congresses that you just show up and you were an attendee, don't put that.
Yeah, I think that's something that also happened in Mexico. Like if you go to a congress, like in pediatrics or whatever, and you have like a little workshop, you add everything, and that was a big like cultural difference, for lack of a better word. I do have a question like following that. We have like an additional training. Do we also have like to describe what we did, except like for example, if I was like a cosmetic trainer here, and do I have to put like, oh, I attended and applied fillers to like an average of 20% per day. Like I know it's very random, but I would like to know if I have to like describe that too.
Well, two things here. If you're just saying the training, just stick to one line and something that's clear enough, like say, train on how to apply cosmetic fillers for cheeks and lips or something, and then the day that you did the training. If you actually were doing it, that could be an activity. Let's say apply fillers in clinic or apply fillers on something once a month for some time. Yeah, that's actually that's an option. I think here is where you need to make sure that is it legal? Is it acceptable? Is it relevant? Because for example, I know that for if you're working in cruise ships, there's really no certification specifically that you need to do that. So it might be important that you describe that you say, oh, I was a cosmetic physician at I don't know, XYZ cruises. And during 3 months, I applied these things, blah, 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 on their approval of following all of the international law. If you were doing, and again, I'm not saying it, if you were doing that in the US, but in the US, you need an actual license to do that, please don't put it. I know the rules change, so don't incriminate yourself trying to show the things that you do. If it's something that is, for example, changes by state. Some states require the license for, let's say, facials, but other states don't. Make sure that you understand what are the rules in your state and don't incriminate yourself again.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like as an IMG myself, I have met a lot of people that for X, Y, or Z reason in life, they have to do like very different jobs. But that's the thing that I would definitely advise to, like how to explain what you do and your experiences, always remembering that there are rules inside here in the US. So that's just like a side note. Another thing that's very like interesting that we had, like I've heard from other IMGs or even other medical students, is how to put your hobbies, if you should add your hobbies in your curriculum. Like what if I only like cooking and that's it? I never took any classes or something, but that's my hobby. How should I add them, or if I should add them?
No, there's no place for hobbies in your CV. Sorry. ERAS is a different stuff, and they had a little thing of hobbies, and I think they took it off, but there's no place for hobbies in your CV. I don't want to see your hobbies in your CV. Nobody wants to see the hobbies in your CV. That's something that should come in your interview or process. The main thing is it becomes cliche at some point. I cannot tell you how many how many, particularly in all eras, everybody would like cooking, travel, exercise, cooking, travel, exercise, cooking, travel, exercise. It's like, so no, there's no need to put hobbies in your CV. Don't feel pressure to put hobbies in your CV. Unless it's something that you think is very relevant, like hobbies. No. If you crochet and you're applying to a specific job in a crochet company, okay, fine. But that's not necessary.
As a follow-up question, can I ask something? Yes. So if it's a hobby that we invest time in, participate regularly, let's say once a week, and take classes in, would you still recommend not putting an activity like that in the CV?
It depends. Here's where it's really depending of the hobby and how it will be interpreted by the people that's reading your application. So photography. hey, if you're getting a photography type level 3 certification, put it in your CV. Why? Because it time's an investment and it might be okay. Cooking, unless you are a sous chef at a restaurant, no, I really, it's not adding too much. It's really come down to the hobby. I've seen people that put, like, for example, their hobby is martial arts. That's totally valid because, oh, you are a black belt. Oh yeah, I want to know that. That means commitment. That means something. If it's a hobby that you have really invested a lot of time, effort, and you practice regularly, like, oh, my hobby is swimming and I coach kids swimming once a week or once a month. Yeah, that's totally valid, and that could be an activity, a volunteer. If it's more a hobby level, and I say the followings are the ones that people gets like grind in their gear. So for example, when people say gym, 8,000 hours, it helps me to relax. They're doing it regular. Yes. And even if I say I do classes, but then a lot of people is like, I want to see how you contribute to others in the hobby. I want to see a little bit more. Or that it involves a little a certain level of skill. If you say, oh, my hobby is that I do pottery and work with clay, and I have done a lot of classes, and I have a little collection of clay plates. You know what? I like that you work with your hands and you are committed. If it's something that the other thing that, and again, this is bias in medicine, gaming. Every time that somebody puts gaming or video games is a fight that I have to have with somebody because they were like, they're just wasting their time. There's no use on that. So it just depends on the hobby.
Thank you. I guess it depends on also the kind of skill that the hobby makes us gain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tansu. Like, because this year, ERAS was changed in the way that now you only have to put 10 experiences and there is no hobby space. So if you wanted to explain about your hobby, how should I talk about it? But you're completely right. If it's not like something that gives you like tangible experience, like since I know Tansu, I know that she takes like great classes and she has a very special dance and stuff. So I think that that could go in your ERAS. For example, if you took classes of martial arts and you have like really high like level stuff like that, I think that for ERAS things you can use one of your 10 chances of like explaining your experiences. But yeah, like that was a big question. Now following also on
I would
the
like to add something to that, and I think you bring a great point that you have only 10 experiences. So if I see a hobby that you have invested time, effort, taken classes, and then is very unique, I like that. That tells me something different that to compare with somebody that gives me 10 experiences, they're all the same. Make sure that your 10 experiences really reflect multiple areas of you are and the things that you have done. And don't be afraid of combining experiences, particularly IMGs. We tend to have a very long career, and we have did almost whole career sometimes back home, or we have done multiple different jobs, but it's okay to combine experiences. For example, I had 4 different clinical jobs before coming to take the steps. I just combine all of them. I say medical doctor. I work at the following clinics, and because I did about the same thing, it was 4 different jobs over 2 years, but I just combined it in one application, in one description. It's okay to do that. If you have if you're working in research and we're working with 3 different PIs, but it's always on the same institution, maybe just reflect the name in the supervisor, the most current one, and then in your description, you can add something. Well, also from 2017 to 2018, I was working with Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so in similar projects or something like that to reflect you're combining, but explaining more the most recent.
Yeah, so in that case, should we add like if I had these 3 research in 3 different years, should I put, okay, I did with Dr. Y from this year to this year, and I did 50 like different, I don't know, like case reports or stuff like that because I'm very prolific. And then with the second one, I was checking in average 100 like electronic records, stuff like that, so I can combine it. And I can save time?
It depends. So, wait, hold on. Yes and no. If you have like 20 experiences that you need to reduce to 10, it's okay to combine, but I highly recommend combining the old ones or things that are very, really similar, but that happen like and happen relatively close. So let's say you were in a hospital and did a observership with one doctor 1 month and an observership with another doctor the next month. Those 2 months might be just one experience. If you only have 3 research experiences and 2 other little things, and you don't need to worry about the 10, just try to stick to the 10s as much as you can. But this is one of those things that talk to other people that have, or to your mentors or somebody, talk to them about what things to combine. Sometimes if it's like 2 projects that happen at the same time, but in one of them you did all of the data collection and in the other one you did all the manuscript, and you need to pick between one of the other, I might tell you, I really care about both. Is there anything else that we can take off? Because those 2 experiences are really important and I really like what they showed you doing different things. So yes, you could combine research experiences together, but I would recommend taking a look of what you are trying to say and making sure that the 10 experiences in general, each of them reflects something different, and that by combining, you are not losing something unique.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense now, like, because since I saw like many people watching, like applying to the match this year and saying, how should I write this? Like, we only have 10 spaces. So that's a very important thing that I think that we should know how to translate it from our CV to that ERAS application specifically. So yeah, I think that we have covered every single step of the ERAS the CV tailoring. Is there any other advice that you would like to give us before like coming to an end?
Ask for help. Ask for help, ask for help, ask for help. Couple of things. And I'll say, if you see a job, now, not talking about ERAS, if you see a job that you would like to apply to, but you are not sure about that, if it's totally reasonable, and you don't know anybody in the job, it's totally reasonable to send an email, a cold email to whoever is posting that job and say, hey, I'm very interested in your job. I'm not sure if my qualifications apply, or I would love to take the opportunity to talk to you in that about this position. I'm very interested. Before you decide to apply, that's totally, or apply and send the email. That's totally reasonable for 2 reasons. One, you're showing really interest. It might not be a good fit, but at the very least, you're making sure that somebody that's not just HR will be taking a look at your application. The second thing is that you get experience talking to people, and you get experience interviewing and practicing and talking and sharing who you are and the things that you do. So it's always good to practice that. That's advice. So ask for help looking at your application. Now, specifically for CVs and ERAS, for the love of God, triple check your grammar. And then and there's like Grammarly and there's multiple AIs, proofread everything. So there's a saying in many academic settings: 1 orthographic mistake is human. 2 is sloppy. It's lack of attention to detail. So that's why I say, if sometimes we see 1 or 2 over here and there, that's fine. When we see 2 next to each other, or the name of the university incorrectly spelled, a lot of people say, you know what, I have another 900 applications to review. This one is out. Grammarly, please. The other thing is, if you're looking your CVs, don't be afraid of highlighting who you are and what you have done. Your CV is not a place to be humble. It's not a place to be humble. If you are in charge, if you're a research coordinator and you have 10 studies under your arm, for the love of God, put it there. oversee 10 different studies and supervise 5 staff, or I have had to receive the following 3 courses in project management and training in order to execute my activities. Do not be humble on your CV. Really highlight the things that you have done. The main mistake I see is people do not put everything that they do on their CV or assume that just by saying research coordinator, everybody will know all of the effort that they put into the work. If your work is in a non-profit setting, say you're working totally you're working in something that's not research and not clinical. Maybe life gets you that you are managing a restaurant. Put it there, I want to see it, and highlight the transferable skills. As a manager of this restaurant, I interact with customers, problem solve disputes, ensure that the customers are treated well. Highlight the transferable skills. If you have to do Uber, that's fine. Put it there. Put it in your CV. Don't be ashamed. And that's say, hey, Uber is a service industry. Manage staff and drive and manage under stress. I had to recognize my level of tiredness to ensure that the safety of myself and my passengers. Communicating with people, learn different languages. Needed to do time management because I also have another job. Don't be humble. Highlight the things that you have done, even if those are not research and even if those are not clinical. Those are the things that make you who you are.
Honestly, thank you for reminding us those kinds of things, because yeah, I think that everyone here has done like a, let's say, odd job, for a lack of a better word again. Like maybe they were like Uber, DoorDash, or whatever life needs you to like add. Again, for like, we have to clarify that this is for the CV, like CV only, not really ERAS, like CV. But yeah, definitely.
I will clarify. Sorry, I'm sorry. I want to interrupt you here because if you did that, and that's important to you, and you want to put it in ERAS, put it in ERAS. Oh. It's okay. If that makes you who you are today, put it in ERAS. You want to show that.
Oh wow, I stand corrected now. Well, that's a new thing I really learned today, because I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Maria beforehand, and again, I have to thank you all, and Dr. Maria, thank you for coming here and helping us to have more insight about how to tailor our CV or resume. What is the difference? This session will be recorded YouTube, of course, but thank you so much for giving us your time and being very mindful of your Saturday morning. We have come to an end. And again, thank you for all of the advice. Really.
No, happy to do that. Anybody, if you saw this message through Twitter, I respond to Twitter very regularly, but if you have any follow-up questions that you want to send a direct message, that's fine. Or you can find my page in my website, in the website of the university. Send me an email. Happy to talk if you have any additional questions. I guess I said before, this is a long road. This is a very long road. So it's about to helping each other. And again, don't be afraid to show what you are and what you have done. Trust me, some people out there will recognize it. Yes, there's some people that's very snobby and will say, oh, they have to do that. You don't want to be those people with those people in the first place. If highlight all the amazing things you have done. That's something I wanted to remind everybody, you have done amazing things. Amazing things. Highlight those. I always highlight those.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I can definitely back up what Dr. Maria said. She's very approachable. She has helped me like review my CV before, and like already like having this like, I know that I speak from a privileged place because I know many amazing IMGs and attendings that could help me with my CV. But again, she's very right. Like if you reach out, like you can achieve a lot of more things. So thank you so much, Dr. Maria. And thank you all for coming here, Tansu, Parisa, Sasa, Linus, everybody for being here. So thank you. See you next time.